It was a scary situation, but all praises due to Allah, I am still here. I have to slow my roll. There's a lot of things I'm gonna have to cut out, and there's some things I may not be able to do as I've been doing them. But where there's a will, there's a way, and I wanted to continue my broadcast. So right now I am at home, and Jackson is in Bridgewater in his dorm, and Larry is in streaming through the city. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. I told Jackson if we get one more person, we could be the Jackson Five.
How are you?
It's cold, Priscilla. It's looking at the headlines this morning. People are sending me about. Really, I'm glad to see Jackson is at Bridgewater State because it does look like a lot of our kids are heading to college, according to the news. And they're saying that at least a third of the seniors this year may not even be able to graduate in June.
I saw that story. I was so like, just like, what is going on in the city of Boston?
Well, it's
Education system
It's right. I mean,
broken.
I've had a bird's eye view. I was fortunate in my last years with BPD, actually the last 14 years of my career, I had the honor of working in the schools and trying to help make a difference and, being able to see it as an observer and not having to be, bogged down with all of the political things that come with being a BPS employee. And I have to tell you, seeing this is not surprising. It's been, in my opinion, just delayed in a sense of telling the public the truth about what has really been happening in our schools, and now we're seeing it firsthand. And you know, we've increased the budget. It's almost $1.7 billion. Now they're talking about laying off more staff in BPS. They've closed schools, and you just wonder what are we paying for? We increased property taxes to pay for this. At some point, I, I think we need a No Queens Day, honestly, in the city of
We need
Boston.
to do something, Dave, because this is totally ridiculous. It makes
It's
no sense. Uh,
ridiculous, but not
over a
unexpected.
thousand, over 1,000 students may not graduate from high school.
But you put that in
That's
perspective, Priscilla, that's probably most of the population, right? If you exclude the students at the exam schools, which normally do well, the vast majority of the students that are in the mainstream public school system are failing and have been failing. So if they're not reading and writing when they come through the door, by the time they get to middle school, how are they going to do that in high school? It just gets harder.
It does. It does. And it's sad. I mean, Michelle Wu is a totally disappointment. She's just in everything. Because see, one of the things that we really need, that we want, that we voted for, is an elected school committee. Because she's just basically doing what she wants to do. We hear that she's not only our high, a lot of our high school students aren't even going to graduate. What does that say about the quality of our schools? And now she wants to take Madison Park and move it to P3 across from the police station. What are they going to do with the old Madison Park? I mean, this is ridiculous. That's why we need an elected school committee.
Well, Priscilla, the disappointment to me is not so much in the mayor as it is in the citizens in Boston, because she's one person, right? And she's holding hostage the rest of the city, and they're allowing themselves. This is no different than what Donald Trump is doing, except she's doing it with her baby in her arms and a smile. She ran on fixing a lot of these things, right? And none of them have been fixed. Mass and cast is no better. The schools aren't any better. Property taxes are through the roof. If you've gotten your recent tax bill, all of these
Please.
things were known to the mayor and also to the people here. We got a huge tax increase last year. And on top of that, we had it reassessed this year. So not only did you get whacked once, but twice because they reassessed your property value and then they went up on the taxes based on the new assessment. So I don't blame the mayor because she's doing what she thinks people allow her to do, and the city council. It's dysfunctional. These are the folks who we elect, and most of them have no background whatsoever of being on the council. And the mayor, to this point, has no business running a city, and because it's really a corporation, and she's not qualified to do so. Clearly, just going after the taxpayers every time you get in trouble financially is not a solution.
I agree, but I still say we voted for an elected school committee. That's something that we voted for. And I guess that's why people say their vote don't count. Because when you vote for something, you expect for it to happen, you know? And just like she was able to just walk in, because she didn't have a challenger. And then we look at what's going on in Franklin Park, White Stadium. I mean, all these things, and we won't even get on talk about the housing. We need workforce housing. It's just all these things that she's supposed to be, up and up on, and she's not. I don't know um who she listens to, but it's definitely not us. It's definitely
No.
not the residents of Boston.
Well, I would like to hear Jackson's perspective on this education piece because for him sitting in his dorm, and I'm sad to say there's probably not going to be many BPS students that are going to have that opportunity. What his if he went to BPS and if he did not, how did he get navigate through this?
All right, you're up, Jackson.
Well, before I didn't really know about this until you guys informed me, and now that I'm like hearing more about it, it seems that it's gonna be more of a difficult thing, especially if like for Madison Park, in the way their school is in their like education system is set up, because Madison Park sets like most of those kids up like as soon as they get out of school, they either have a job or they're ready, like supposed to be ready for college or for the union or the trades. And basically, with this, it just seems like this is going to affect them really bad because most of those Madison Park is built up of like a bunch of different communities. So it's going to be harder for those kids, especially those kids who come from nothing, to come in with nothing and leave with nothing, if that makes sense. And I feel like, from my understanding, from the youth's understanding, this is not really an education thing. I think for me, it's more of a environmental thing. So most of these kids might go to school to get this education and try to um, move away from Boston or try to go to a better area, if that makes sense. For like, especially for like safety reasons, or if in this case it is education, then yeah. But um,
It's ironic. No, it's ironic because I'm listening to you, Jackson, and well spoken. It's that I just happened to grab because it was cold. I have on my Madison Park hoodie, right, sweatshirt today, right,
yeah,
because it's one of the schools that I was working very diligently with when I was with the police department, not in law enforcement, but trying to because I think most people don't realize or don't know that Madison Park, if you on there's levels 1 to 5, 5 being the worst. Madison Park was a level 4, meaning that it was already in academic trouble before COVID hit, right? So COVID
yeah,
did help compound that, but it wasn't. That was what they used conveniently to blame that COVID somehow was the reason why there was a lapse in learning at that school. It had nothing to do with COVID. COVID just exacerbated, and actually I think the conversation doesn't get enough attention is what is the state doing? Because the state prior to COVID was thinking about putting the BPS school system in receivership because it hasn't been performing. And there's been no update as to what findings they've had of any improvements. And clearly they're telling on themselves that there hasn't been any improvements. They're closing schools, shutting the budget, and saying that kids are going to not be able to graduate in June. And the silence is deafening.
Meanwhile,
yeah,
the superintendent gets an $85,000 a year raise. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just why is the school budget continually to go up? Who are they paying?
Well, the bureaucracy, because they're closing before the election. The mayor said they were going to be closing 3 schools. Now it's up to 6, and I believe it's going to be even more than that, right? And on top of that, right? you have an administration that, again, that continues to not engage with parents in a meaningful way, and even with the students. So we're going to see more kids in the poverty line, in the city of Boston, because look, once they get out of school, no employer is going to coddle them and say, hey, you need to come to work, but you can't perform in your job. We're going to keep you on the payroll. That's not going to happen. We're setting these kids up for failure. And
Right.
even the People's Academy, the vocational portion of that school, would be helpful with some of these kids who weren't college bound to begin with, but at least they would have a skill that they could market out there. And now with AI in the mix as well, I don't know what it is. I know what's taking place now is not moving the needle in the right direction.
My other thing is I don't think that would really only be affecting the kids that go there. I think that would be affecting the families of those kids that go there because I feel as like the families of those kids that go there, they're expecting the kids to come out of the Madison Park with something like a job or going to college with a scholarship. And now, if this is the case, it's just going to be more of a difficult thing because now it's basically my child went through 4 years of high school just to end up nowhere and just end up with
Jackson,
nothing.
you're
Which
more likely a student in BP in Madison Park, because of what I say, is more likely to graduate with a Corey rather than a diploma.
with
Mm.
the what?
A Corey, or a
What's
record.
Jackson,
A Corey
oh
Jackson,
is a criminal record.
oh
Mhm.
okay.
Because the
Jackson, what high school did you go to?
Me? Oh
Mhm.
I went to Roxbury Prep.
Which one? The one in High Pop
Um,
or the
yeah,
one?
but that was the lower campus for ninth and 10th grade, and then once you get to 11th, they move you to Nubian Station. But they recently built a new building, and now that new building's in
Back
South Boston, so like South
South
Bay.
Bay? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. There's issues with that school as well. But okay, so you graduated and you were this is your second year at Bridgewater State, correct?
yeah.
What are you taking up at Bridgewater?
Right now, psychology. Well, that's my major. I'm taking mostly psychology classes, and right now I'm doing intro to public speaking and a bunch of other classes.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean it's really sad. I'm gonna someone sent me that article about BPS. I'm gonna see if I can find it. Um, let me see. I think it might have been you, Mr. Larry Ellis.
it was
One
me,
third,
and I'm,
one
I'm gonna.
third, one third of BPS seniors risk not graduating high school in June. More than a third of BPS seniors are not on track to complete required mass core classes. More than one third of Boston Public School seniors are not on track to meet a new graduation requirement for core coursework. District data show, leaving many of them at risk of not earning high school diplomas in June. Now, what's this new graduation requirement? What is that?
Well, they removed the MCAS, right, because they felt like that was really what the focus was on in the schools, right? And so this actually gave them cover because they didn't have to get kids learning, right? Because you felt like in some ways MCAS was keeping them from advancing education in the schools. That wasn't the case at all, because MCAS is statewide, and kids in other schools are performing MCAS, but also learning other matters in their school district. So, like I said, this is not a money problem. This is a lack of will. This is a lack of having competent people in the right places. Like I said, I don't know who is shuttering school doors and education declining and gets a pay raise for doing it and gets reelected. The mayor, as the superintendent, gets a pay raise. The mayor gets reelected, and the taxpayers take it on the chin financially. And our students are the biggest losers of this because they're not going to be able to compete.
Exactly. From what I understand, one of the school committee members was not reappointed because he always went against the grain. He always went against the grain. And so he was not reappointed. So that clearly tells you that when all Michelle Wu wants are yes people, just like
Sound
the
like
city council,
sound
just like
like Washington D.C.
you're right. I'm telling you that that foolishness at the city council, I was just so heated. It made no sense. But this is Boston. That's why we need to get more people in elected office. That's why we need to run what do you call it?
Wait,
Oh, slates. Yeah, we do. Because if we're gonna have people that vote what the because the mayor say vote, we're already been in trouble. So we have housing issues, we have the education issues, we have the jobs issues. We and these are major things: education, housing, jobs. I mean, it makes no. I'm telling you, something is seriously wrong. And like you said, you have to blame our people too. When are we going to stand up to this foolishness that's going on in our city?
well, Priscilla, do you know how many people I've already spoken with, and particularly our elderly population, that are in jeopardy of losing their housing because some of them were saying, you know what, I can't afford this tax increase, so I'm just going to avoid paying the taxes. But a lot of people, their taxes are escrowed in, meaning they're collected in their mortgage payment, right? So
Yeah,
people are now getting behind on their mortgage payment because the banks don't take a partial payment. And they'll continue to pay the taxes even if you don't because they don't want the property to be in foreclosure with the city. And you'll end up losing your home, right?
yeah,
Because not because your mortgage increased because of the bank, but because the city has decided over the last few years to continue to dig in your pocket, for the taxes. To I wouldn't even, it would bother me, but probably a little less because I own properties in Boston. If I felt like this money was going towards something of value that there's kidding, but to wake up and read this and say, what was this huge tax increase to pay for? What are we funding here?
Larry, Priscilla dropped out for some reason. I'm waiting for her to get back in. So now it's the Larry Ellison broadcast.
Yeah, so Jackson, while we're waiting for Priscilla to come back, how did you make it through? Because I'm curious because I did see a little better in the charter schools when I was working for BPD in the school system. I was in the school unit, part of the security for the schools. I did see that the charter schools were able to siphon off some of the brightest students that weren't going to the exam schools. How did you make it through, young man?
Well, I would say my school was more. I can't speak for everybody else, but I would say me personally, my school was like more of a support system for me,
Mm.
and like everybody else that was like you know either like came from a troubled home, a low incoming family, or like stuff like that. For me, like especially graduation, I seen everybody in my class that like everybody I knew for like since middle school, we all graduated together. I didn't see nobody that didn't graduate in my class. My school basically set us up for like, you know,
Success.
yeah, exactly, for all of us to go to college. But what I would say is Madison Park, like most schools in Boston should be more like Madison Park, where if you don't want to go into college, you could go into a trade and make money or get a job as soon as you come out of school, which was, you know, um, I guess things happen, but I guess they are implementing certain things now that they have built a new building and like there's more. It's more diverse because I think it's middle school to high school now with the new building. And yeah, I would say my
See,
school.
but see, Jackson, to that point, right? And don't be fooled by that because the reason why they going from K to seventh and eliminated the middle schools is because the population has declined, right? It's not for any reason to accelerate learning in these schools. Because to your point with Madison Park, it's like a tale of two cities. Think about it. What school is abutting Madison Park? The O'Brien, right? And I used to
Right.
say, me and my partner, we would drive down to the school, and I said to him, and this is not being profiling kids, but I said I could tell which students were coming from because they were all in the same area together, which students were Madison Park students and which students were O'Brien School students. And he says, well, how
Right.
can you tell? I said, just look at the ones with the book bags that are practically breaking their back as they're walking, and the other ones who have nothing in their hands, no book bags, nothing, right? That's more likely to be a Madison Park student, right? Because we know
Right.
the learning isn't taking place. And these are two schools that are side by side, they're attached by a wall, right? So I'm asking you, do you have any friends that went through Madison Park that are in college now?
Um.
You're
mm,
scratching your head like, no,
not that I would know of like directly, but most of my friends that are in college with me, they all come from different schools in Boston, like Boston Prep, New Mission, Snowden, or like Fenway. I don't really
Mhm.
hear too many of my friends say, "Oh, I went to Madison Park."
Right, right. And they and this is the other thing. We spend more per student in Massachusetts. It's up around $33,000 per student than any other school district, not just in the state, but in the country. In the country, we spend more. And what are we getting for it? Nothing. Nothing. Kids who can't read and write, you're handing them a diploma that they can't even read. You're setting them up for failure. Yeah, I mean, this should be criminal. We should be filing. I remember the MBTA police filed a 51A against Boston Public Schools. Every parent should be filing a 51A for neglect and abuse of their child if they're in one of these failing schools, because that is their charge: is to educate these kids, keep them safe, and educate them. That's not a whole lot to ask of
Right,
someone with a $1.7 billion budget.
right. And then I feel like another thing with the school system is like the public transportation,
Hmm.
especially within like the Madison Park area. It's what you call it. I feel like it's more of a struggle for certain people, like the outside, like people who are on the public transportation who have to like go through things with like maybe a packed bus because kids are coming in and out of the school like a certain times throughout the day, and it's just like the bus gets more and more packed. If that makes sense, it's I guess it would make it harder for other people to travel, especially for certain times. And I don't think they're make what should we call it? Excuse me, I might be a little bit tired, but I don't think they're really
No, it's okay.
what's it? Hold on, I lost my train of thought.
No,
I
no. To
lost
your
my train.
point, so let me just say this, Jackson. BPS, Boston Public Schools, spends over $200 million a year on
Yeah,
buses, right? It would
yeah,
be cheaper to buy every family in the school district a car every 4 years, or lease them a car, than it would be to spend on these buses, right? So
right,
again, and then the other students that aren't eligible for the bus, because if you're seventh grade and above, and you don't have any issues that would not allow you to ride on public transportation, you're given a T pass.
yeah,
So on top of the empty buses that we're paying for kids from K through 7 through 6, we're spending all this money on a transportation system that isn't bringing anyone to school, because everyone at
yeah,
Madison Park has a T pass, just, except for special needs.
right,
So again, like Priscilla was bringing up, the Boston resident voted for an elected school committee. The mayor does not want that. She now has everything she desires. She has she has an appointed school committee that reports totally to her, and now she has the majority of the city council that she has got elected that will rubber stamp anything she wants. Game over.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, y'all. I had to take a little break.
That's right.
Little technical difficulties. I see.
That's
It looks like Pastor Dan is on the line. Good morning, Pastor Dan. Hello. He's not speaking.
He's
Pastor.
he's muted for some reason.
Oh, all right. Well, yeah. So unfortunately, this is where we're at, and the fact that Michelle did not have an opponent. That's a major, major issue. At least she would have had some type of competition, but she didn't have any really. I mean, Josh Kraft went to the primaries and dropped out. I mean, it just
But
makes
see,
me so angry.
Priscilla, I have to push back on that because
Well,
even though she does have opponents. It's the residents of the city, right? Even though she's elected, she doesn't have a mandate to do whatever she wants. She
well,
has
she's
to be held
doing it.
accountable. Right. So that's what I'm saying. That's not on her. That's not on Josh Kraft. That's on the residents of Boston who allow this to continue to take place. That's really where the focus should be, is that what are the people who are there living in this situation, whose kids are being deprived of an education, what are they going to be doing this morning? What are they talking about this morning? Probably not what we're talking about. And that's how they get away with this. This is not a really difficult fix. It's just a willingness. People say, well, what can I do? Well, you can do
There's a
something.
lot. There's a lot. You can start making phone calls down to City Hall. You can start showing up at these city council meetings. You can start going to these budget hearings. You can not going to tell me that all these people that live in Boston, over close to 700,000 people, and none of you all, so especially the ones that have children in Boston public schools. I understand. I mean, people have to work. They have to work. Some people have to work 2 and 3 jobs. But you mean to tell me there's nobody that you can get to come to your school, go to your school? You don't have a sister or a brother or an uncle or an aunt or a mother or a father or a friend that can go and represent you at these schools, at these hearings, at these meetings. I mean, I feel like, you know, I have to calm myself down, but
Right.
I,
Yeah, you
I'm
don't need to get. We don't need you getting. Let us take the stress. That is not your job. To be stressing yourself out. We've
But
already seen those.
it is a part of my stress because I was born and raised in the city,
Right.
and unfortunately, I lost both of my children, so they really didn't have to go through this Boston public system. But if I was a parent or a grandparent, I mean, it just does not. I don't know what's wrong with our people. We have to wake up, like you said. It is, even though we have these people in office, yes, and they're not doing the right thing by us, yes. But what are we doing? That's why I had my little group called the Senior Soldiers. We need to go down there and be at them city council hearings. I keep saying it. I keep saying it. I keep saying it. But what one thing, those hearings, especially the ones on Wednesday, uh, from 12 noon to maybe 2. People are at work at that time. So there's not, they don't want to be held accountable. That's what I think. But we need to start writing campaigns, emailing them. We need to bombard their phone. They keep calling, keep calling.
Look, the mayor went in the dead of night. She had her cronies go over there and twist the arms of the current president of the council, which I think was in an illegal manner because I think it violates the Open Meetings Act for that many city councilors to be together discussing city council matters, right? And I think someone really needs to be looking into whether or not that was legal or not. But that was designed to make sure she has a president and a city council where she had no opposition. Because why aren't there hearings on this? I mean, they rubber stamped this budget, but now she has the majority, so she doesn't even need anyone else's help to continue to pass, and no one's holding her accountable. I mean, this is not play money. This is the largest
Exactly.
budget is the Boston public school systems.
Yep.
That's the largest chunk of the city's budget. And yet we keep pouring more gasoline on this fire, and we're wondering why went from a 2 alarm to a 5 alarm. But Madison Park, if people, like I said, the question needs to be asked is, what it's an election every year in the city of Boston. This is a statewide election this year. We need to be asking our elected officials at the state level, what is the state doing to intervene in this before we cast a vote for anyone at the state level this year that affects Boston? What are we doing to
I
hold
hear
the
you.
city accountable?
I see my one of my good friends who's education, Sharon Hinton. Good morning, my sister.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. How you doing?
I am blessed and highly favored. I'm loving this conversation, but I'm having issues with it. I tell you why. I
Mm.
need people to. Good morning, Brother Ellison, and I don't know if that other young brother was there.
Good morning.
Thank you. Priscilla, for sending me this link. I was doing other stuff. Is everybody is really busy and just surviving. It's cold out there. I don't like the cold, and so there's that part, right? But in terms of education and people stepping up, there was competition against Mayor Wu. But when you have a system that is loaded with money and all money ain't good, it
Mm.
looks like, and they can buy influence, they can buy media exposure. It gives people the perception, especially people who are not in the political arena, that she was on that ticket by herself, or it was only Josh Kraft and Mayor Wu. It was not. There were four people that were on that ticket. And there were more people than that that actually vied for that. We've got to understand who we are dealing with in City Hall and what she will do to maintain power. We look at Trump on a national level. We need to look at a local level and what she does to maintain power. And those people who think that they know the game of plantation politics and they think they're playing chess and they're getting chessed out. Okay.
No, Sharon, I said we need to have a No Queens Day because I totally agree with everything you just said. Is that Mayor Wu is no different than Donald Trump. She just does it with a child in her arms
Come
and
on.
a
Come on.
smile. But there is no
And the
difference in the
ashes on her
policy.
forehead. Any ashes on her forehead. Remember,
Yeah.
she didn't even give over. Let's keep it real. She didn't even when she left Washington. She first off, she didn't take maternity leave because if she had taken maternity leave, she would have had to give over power to Ruthie Louis Jen, and she never did that. She never exceeded that. Even when she left, for a couple of days, she never did that. And so she's all about the power. And I know her, and I've known her and met her before she was city council when she was going to little black churches and seeming all harmless and stuff like that. That chick is a viper. That ain't
You
no
know,
joke.
no, and to that
And then
point, to that point, you talk, and
her
that's what
also,
is
one
the
more thing.
privilege, Sharon. Her privilege, right? Because no other city worker would be allowed to bring their child to work with them every day.
Well, the
Mhm.
work is the work for her can't bring their kids to work. Let's keep it real. We don't even have to go on the national level. She's been since her first kid talking about making a statement for women, mothers, working mothers, and that's great. But how many women that work for her can do what she does and what she's been doing, bringing her kid to school? And I heard that on the campaign trail. I heard that more in the white communities about, oh, is she bringing her prop baby up in there too? I mean, the black communities, some of the black elder women were saying, oh, I just love her. And that little baby, I said, really, you love her? That's cool. What kind of policies? What has she done for the black community?
Hey,
Well, I just don't know anything about that. I don't really pay attention to the news, but I just love her and that little baby. I'm like, come on, man. Are you serious? We do not have the luxury of squandering, especially during Black History Month. We got to keep it real. Well, for those of us are Black 365 all day,
as I say,
every day.
this month means nothing to me. It's every day for me. I don't even acknowledge it. When they talk about that and showing black movies and black documentaries, I don't even watch it because I think it's like it's I find it insulting.
It's
Yeah.
insulting, but I watch it because I'm looking for
No,
every
I watch it
grain
all
of it.
year round. I'm saying I just this
Right,
month
right, right.
because I feel like
I
you're
get
telling
you.
me that I need to be watching it this month
Oh, no, no,
and not
no.
every
No,
day. And
not
then at
you.
the and then 28 days I go back to watching them. No.
Well, the thing is that, and God bless, Brian Worrell, but one of the reasons that I ran in District 5, there has never been a woman District 5 city councilor. That's a problem for me. That's systematic because there have been women that have run but there's never been a woman. And there've been black women that have run, but there's never been a woman. Slip sliding, flying, or gliding, gay, straight, pink, purple, blue, polka dots. There's never been a woman in District 5. And the person who's in the seat, I like him personally, but policy wise, he and Ben Weber have voted for the mayor regardless of what the people wanted. And that's a problem for me. You don't have the checks and balances. And I'm calling them out because I don't work for any of them. You've got Ruthie Louis Jen, who voted against Brian Worrell. How dare you? You've
Hello.
got you've got
Oh,
you've got
Steve Santana.
Enrique Pepin, who conveniently says he's a man of color, but in the midnight he goes to an Irish immigrant, female, lesbian, gay, older. What? And Austin Brighton, who's never cared about anything other than Austin Brighton. How dare you? Then you got Henry Santana, and supposedly, see, I'm yelling now. I'm sorry. Then you got supposedly Enrique, and two mayor sycophants, two mayor puppets go to this woman's house in Austin Brighton the night before and say that she's the compromise and against a black man. And we haven't had a black man city councilor, the president of city council, 25 years. And that's supposed to be the compromise. So their reasoning was because what's her name? Coletta Zapata was Gabriela was going to pick Henry Santana as vice chair, another man of color. So Henry Santana should be pulled out in the public square and beat down. And I like him personally, but this is not personally. This is not personality. This is policy.
He's not
And
qualified.
come on, but so what? So what? He's unqualified, but he's in there. So he's
Right.
in there. I'm looking at his decisions, living in Grove Hall, black man, Dominican. Come on, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then he sides against Brian Worrell. He was one vote away. One vote away. So Henry Santana going, I mean, I know why he went on the man's side. He wouldn't be in there. He wouldn't be in there. Enrique wouldn't be in there.
Right.
They were put in there and propped up. When I ran for that office, I knew I wasn't running against Enrique. I was running against the mayor.
That's
Let's be
right.
clear in what we're doing. 120,000 people voted for there to be an elected school committee, and she ignored it. Don't tell me that you're in a democracy and you ignore the more people voted for that than voted for her, and you ignore it, and
But
then
there
you
are no
appoint.
consequences, Sharon. What are the consequences, right? We've identified what are the consequences for the inaction or the ignoring the voters? Nothing. She gets reelected. So you think she's worried about anything that really we were saying here today, or what's been said, or what will be said, until the people who put them in office understand that they work for them and not the other way around? This is going to continue. This is why I don't live in the city of Boston, because in my town, the people decide what happens with their money. The people decide whether or not what's going to happen in their schools, and that's the way it should be. Look, like I said, we're looking at this on a national level. Mayor Wu is no different than Donald Trump, and what she is running for now is not for re-election for mayor. She is running for the Senate seat until Markey decides to either God takes him or he decides to retire. But that is her next objective, and she knows that being mayor was the only path for her, the clear path for her in her mind to get there. She could care less about what's happening in this city. If she
Well, I
did,
think
it
I
wouldn't
think
be
she
the
cares about
accomplishment.
what's happening with this
Right.
city, but I think it's a facade about what she cares about in the black community. There's a big difference. I think she
Well,
cares about what's happening in the city because I mean, to your point of if she was a doctor and she was screwing up as much as she was doing, her license would be taken and she wouldn't be able to practice medicine. I mean, Superintendent Skipper, and I like her too. You
right.
know,
Me too.
she if she how do you get a renewal of your contract and a raise, and the major issues of what Desi was saying are not addressed? And then the latest report from the Boston Globe, only 30% of the students can graduate, of the seniors, the current
Talked about
seniors
that. Right. Right.
are ready to graduate. Are you kidding me? If any one of us were doing our jobs like that, we'd have been fired.
That's
Fired.
that's what we say, Sharon. If you go into those numbers, I would be willing to bet that the vast majority of those that will be walking across the stage in June are from the exam schools,
Mm.
not
Well,
from DPS. Madison Park was in trouble. I told people Madison Park was in trouble prior to COVID. COVID was a convenient excuse for them to blame. But these kids were already at a level 4, which means that the state should have taken over. And this is why I say was saying, Sharon, is that what are we doing at the state level as well? Because they're just watching this happen when the state was threatening to come in and take over. I'm not saying it would be any better, but it can't be any worse. What are we doing with our elected officials? It's election time at the state level this year. What are we doing to put pressure on them to force the state's hand to intervene in this tragedy that's happening with our kids?
well, that's problematic too, because the problem is that there's an on-ramp to Desi in the state coming in, but there's no clear off-ramp. And so Desi, in some circumstances, stayed in, different municipalities much longer than they should have. With no,
You know what's with
so
Desi
you got a couple things going on. You've got the charter schools getting way so much money. You've got the pilot program where people are not paying their taxes. You got a mayor that's willing to put $100 million into White Stadium when BPS is underwater for $53 million, which is half of the money you got to talk about supporting this white sporting team. I mean, come on, man. The consequences should be that the national spotlight gets put on her to keep her from being able to move to a higher position until she cleans up where she is.
Sharon, can you
You don't.
explain to people who don't know what DESI is, what the acronym, what that means? Because I do, but a lot of people don't, so that they understand, and if they want to reach out to them, who DESI
So,
is.
so Tutwiler is the head of, well, DESE is Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Thank you.
But there's so many different places you could testify, and this is difficult too because a lot of these hearings are not at convenient times if you're working and or you're at school or you're doing both. So the people that are directly impacted are not necessarily available to be able to give their on the ground testimony that can say, no, this is not working. What you're doing is not working. Now, I used to go to Boston Public Schools, and then I left at in the sixth grade and went to Beaver Country Day.
Mm.
Now, private, exclusive, wealthy, at that time all female, very different. But even now, it's very different. I mean, it's very different in terms of cost and everything. But then, the partnership, the pilot fees, the hospitals, and it's not just schools, and the major schools are not paying their full share. The negotiations and there's some sort of initiative, but there's really no legal way to critically push back. So the backdoor negotiations in between what the universities want in terms of land and the deals that they want in terms of land and tax-free land versus them paying taxes right out. So payment in lieu of taxes is what the hospitals, the universities, and some of these nonprofit places get. We've got gobs of churches that don't pay taxes. So you've got so many, and then you get your taxes for the you get the revenue for the education from the property taxes. And so there's less of Black people that own houses now, and that goes to the institutional racism across the banks,
But
across the
Sharon,
administrative, everything.
Sure. Let,
So
let me jump in. Let me jump in there because I think something you said is very poignant, right? Is that, Boston is the cradle of education, right? People come from all over the world, not the country, all over the world here. And you said, to your point, with payment in lieu of taxes to these universities, there is no reason that if they're not paying taxes, that they should be supporting in some way. We should not have a crumbling school system. We're not some Midwestern country, Midwestern state where we're back in the farmland where there's no one in there, no infrastructure in place. We are having learning all around our community, but we're not being the sponge to absorb any of it. That in itself should tell you all you need to know.
that is a big part of it, but also the other part of it is you don't have the checks and balances to push back. And when you do, they get
Yeah.
marginalized. When
There
Julia
you go.
Mahir, who's now the head of education and the chair of education, Brian Worrell, put forth initiatives and the other people don't vote and support it. So you have some voices that are coming out there and saying something. The people need to show up and they need to put the pressure on the other people who are not doing their jobs. Call them out. Stop being so damn polite about what is happening to our kids. I
Mm.
got my daughter through successfully, but I pushed every single way. I showed up at the parent site council, the school site council, the hearings at the state house, the school committee. I applied for the school committee 5 times, and they came up with so much crap to not let me even. And I interviewed and came in the first one or two finalists and still wasn't selected because it comes down to whoever's in power appointing you. And most people that get into positions of power don't want to give it up. And there's a mayor, heavily run mayor city, and there's
So
no checks and balances.
Well, Sharon, to that point, right? Like you said, you think about it. You and I and a lot of others who are fighting this fight don't have any real stake in it other than wanting to help our people. My kids are in a very good school. My oldest, she scored a perfect score on the MCAS, the last one that they had, the final one they had. So my kids are learning, right? But I'm not. We're not sitting on the sideline. And the people who are, sadly, the people that are impacted the most by these decisions, by what they're doing, are the ones who are the voiceless, the ones who are sitting by waiting for someone else like us to do it for them. And I'm honestly tired of trying to fight a fight for folks who don't want to fight for themselves because history has taught us if we're not all don't have some skin in this game, we're all going to suffer in some way.
That's true. However, if we look at every single battle, I mean, every single one in this country, it didn't start with a whole bunch of people. They've snowballed into a whole bunch of people. And then because we don't tell our own history to our kids, they think, they have this propaganda and this machine that convinces them that they're powerless. So we're not doing our jobs in the home. My first Black History courses and information was from my father and from my mother in my house. And he said, I didn't have any dummies. I'm not raising any dummies. And he made sure we were only watching an hour of television, if that. And even within that, we couldn't watch, everything. And so he reprogrammed and deprogrammed. And my father is one of the architects of Operation Exodus, which became Metco. So 50 years ago, when he was working with Ruth Batson and Ellen Jackson, he said this should only be a temporary solution while we build our own schools, because they are never going to give us the information we need to be as strong as we need to overturn the system. 50 years later, plus, he was right. And we're
No,
losing people. We're losing
right.
these
We're more.
people that have this in their heads, and they're not passing this information on to the younger people who understand you didn't get this from nothing and you're not entitled to anything, and they will take it.
No, we're more willing to be entertained and informed, and that's a real sad reality of where we are. Because like you said, our people are using these devices. Like you said, back then, was a sense of community, a sense of pride. You wanted better for the next generation. We're starting to lose sight of that, where we're not fighting and advocating for that for our kids. Because a lot of times, if you look at the parents, they're not advocating for it for themselves.
I
Then we have to define even the definition of we. Who are we talking about?
Mhm.
right,
We,
right.
because all skin folk ain't kinfolk,
Yeah.
right? And every brother ain't a brother, and every sister ain't a sister. And so there are people that
You
look
have to
like us,
just
but
feel.
they're not like us. And
You
they
said,
get in these positions and turn around and act like they came in here and saved us from slavery, and they came in there and we're beholden to them. And when they go in there and they advocate, they are being manipulated by the plantation owners to keep the plantation divided. Oh, I'm not black, I'm Jamaican. Or I'm not black, I'm Haitian. Or I'm not black, I'm Latino. I'm not black. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? And
What
every
back in
time
the
we were
day, we need to
powerful,
get back to say it loud. I'm black and I'm proud.
well,
yeah.
in the People United, when